David Heitch, late resident of the Sleeper, actually, this morning. The question about the governance model, I think, is still quite critical, and I think it's fair to remind people that it took Greater Manchester over 20 years of practicing with AGMA before they actually reached the point where all of the different parties of the leaders of the councils managed to agree on the combined authority. So I think there's a sort of maturity and learning about how to make that model work, and I wish Liam all the best in working that through with Merseyside. But I think it is the right model to go. On a wider issue, and one that's been mentioned about ticketing and smart ticketing, and this model of Oyster for the North, I think that actually we have a version of that already if the various transport bodies and the bus operators actually sit down and agree that there is something worthwhile that will help passengers, and that's to start using contactless bank cards. Don't go for proprietary models such as the original Oyster. But actually the new model that TfL have built, the new back office they've built, actually could work much better than the original Oyster scheme. And I just hope that TfL get to a point where they're willing to share that for a modest price in the fairly near future.
Liam.
And that would be a really sort of interesting discussions to have with TfL. I think none of us in the North are precious about what the operating system would be. And I think what we all agree on, though, is it's got to be simple, it's got to be straightforward. And if I'm addressing the point very directly, the biggest difficulty we've had in cities like Liverpool, but actually in all the big cities of the country, not just the North, is actually trying to get the bus companies to come on board with all this. The rail community have been pretty good and pretty kind of proactive within it all. The difficulty we've had is with a variety of bus operators wanting to do their own thing. Now, from our perspective, that's not about us wanting to stifle their commercial independence. Far from it. There's some good ideas they can bring to the table. But let's be sort of very blunt about it. One of the key reasons that Oyster has been so successful in London is it's straightforward. There's one Oyster card. And if we're expecting people in Liverpool, in Manchester, in Leeds, in Newcastle to have a raft of different cards to get on a bus, then get on a train, to get on a ferry, people won't use them.
Why hasn't that come to pass?
Effectively, it's because of the legislation that oversees the bus industry. Because the buses are deregulated outside of London, there's no ability to say to operators,
but surely you must use this platform. You don't want an Oyster card. The whole, as far as I understand, I'm not a technical expert at all on these things, is that the Oyster card is being phased out. And actually, it's just about whatever card you've got, contactless credit card or card you've got. So actually, no one should be putting in an Oyster card system. The Chancellor's wrong about that. You don't want an Oyster card. You just want to be able to plonk it down, know what fare you're getting, get a commonality of fares across the system.
One simple platform.
Exactly.
And at this moment in time, we've had quite a bit of difficulty trying to get that in each of our individual cities, let alone a pan-northern approach. I'm really quite pleased that we seem to be moving in that direction in terms of what's been announced with Transport for the North, with Rail North, and now through the budget today. I think we'll start to get some traction. It's unfortunate, though, it's 10 years later than it ever should have been, because let's be honest, part of Oyster's success, it's had a decade to do it, and we're still catching up.
I got on a bus in London a week ago, didn't have any money, and so on and so forth. I just put my credit card on the thing. Not credit card, debit card on the thing. Why can't that work everywhere? End of.
Yeah, but that works in London, you're saying,
no,
yes.
No, but I'm sorry, Kirsty, the gentleman, one of you
said...
Yes,
why doesn't it work anywhere?
Export the system. It's so easy.
And I'm sure
presumably then you just have to get the different bus companies to sign up to it. You don't actually even have to think fare structure. You just get them to sign up to it. And the contactless thing says if you've been on, I don't know, the mega bus or you've been on whatever, and you just pay whatever is the relevant fare.
That's one start, but one of the things we would like to see is make sure that we get it simple. It's not just about having the platform, it's about making sure that things like pay-as-you-go on Oyster, where you get fares capping. At this moment in time, that's really difficult to do outside of London because you can't, to be blunt about it, make sure that transport operators are abiding by that. There's, at the moment, enough autonomy for them to do what they want to do.
There would be resistance to that, wouldn't there?
that this is a large current issue with the bus industry and between the bus industry and the cities. What's really interesting on this, this is turning into a bus conference, what's really interesting is that it's the Conservatives that deregulated the buses 30 years ago. I sense that most Conservatives have now looked at London, thought basically, as that gentleman said, it's just simple, let's do this, it should work, why can't we have this elsewhere? And the bus industries have been a bit wrong-footed by this and has found it quite difficult and are having difficulty accepting that the world's changed, though I believe they are now coming forward with some offers on this kind of thing. And because the relevance of this conference is because the bus operators often run the train franchises, the opportunities there's some quite a lot of opportunities for integration there.
Patrick Gannon, Transport for London. Quick observation, then a question. Just firstly, to do with, I agree, the buses bill. I think it's perhaps was good for its time, but out of date 10 years ago. Secondly, just if you just have contactless for people with, say, travel cards, etc., disabled pensioners, etc., you need a platform. You can't just rock up and go. I just wanted to ask on devolution, though, these city mayors, elected mayors, are we going to expect an adverse effect on rural communities from it? Is anything there to protect those services?
A good point.
I think that's a really good point. I think that's why, at the end of the day, devolution needs to be available to every community in Britain. And that's why we shouldn't just get solely fixated with one governance model. As Stephen made the point about Cornwall, or you could take Norfolk, for example, or a whole host of different rural areas, Lancashire. I think it would be unusual for those kind of county areas to settle on a kind of mayoral model. They might choose to, but again, they might choose not to. So really, we've got to have a mechanism by which the governance can be locally decided, boldly decided, and people not kind of sticking with a consensus.
You've got to have a centre point where there can be a power, because the point about the mayor is what the mayor has, the greatest, in London, the greatest vote outside the President of France. And I think that's quite key to making it work. If you have sort of a whole series of models, then you lose out. I mean, one of the great benefits of Manchester has been combined authorities. One of the things that we've been talking about in London is there a way of replicating that idea of combined authorities, because it has given a much more centralised feel, but with also having the localness kept into it. And I think that if you lose out on that fulcrum, if you lose out on that mayoral figure, then you just have another set of talking shops.
But the problem is that people rally around London. You don't necessarily, there's so many different areas where you wouldn't be rallying around a single place. That's the point.
But London has managed, when you think of the boroughs and the difference of boroughs and the selection of villages and all that sort of thing that London was famous for, we have decided to rally around. I think in cities, you certainly should be able to make that work. The Manchesters, the Leeds, the Liverpools, you should be able to make that work.
I agree, but actually railway operations don't always follow this. So Rail North is actually a collection of, I think, 29, 30 authorities with a structure that allows some say over this. But even within that, the benefits of localisation and devolution are already clear, because only when the new Northern Rail franchise was being looked at did some people in the north say, why is it that all the trains to the British Nuclear Fuels site in Sellafield all arrive after the commuter thing? Why can't we do something about that? Nobody had ever asked that question. So I think the benefits of having, yes, city region led, but much larger areas work for the north and also for the West Midlands, where I know the proposition for West Midlands Rail involves the West Midlands conurbation taking a lead, and we might end up with a mayor and combined authority for the West Midlands. Definitely won't be called Greater Birmingham, because otherwise Coventry and Solihull will have nothing to do with it. But West Midlands conurbation, but with West Midlands Rail going out as far as Stafford and Hereford, because that makes sense in railway geography terms. And I don't see why you can't do that. I think the same issue will happen in London, because it does make sense, for example, for TfL to run services out to, say, Sevenoaks, and there's got to be some way of managing the governance of that and making sure that people in Kent don't feel marginalised. But I mean, these things can be sorted
sorted out. It's not...
interesting, the people of Kent, I mean, I was at the Assembly doing a hearing on just this thing, and they'd just that morning been to Kent, and there was overwhelming support in certainly Kent local government for the idea of getting these things under... I mean, the problem, of course, is where do you draw the boundary about where TfL or whoever has its thing. Exactly. But, and you have to get the local end of it on side. But actually, they know that the satisfaction of their residents is dependent on being able to get into London, get to work and bring the money back and spend in the supermarkets.
Another question?
It was pointed out how long it took to get the Greater Manchester Authority to all speak as one voice as they do now. Is there not a danger with 16 different bodies on the council and 16 different members that it's going to take just as long?
Liam?
I don't think so, certainly not in our part of the world, because one of the things we're very proud of in the Liverpool City region is we established our combined authority quicker than anywhere else. OK, we started after Greater Manchester, but we did it in 9 months. So the fact we were able to achieve that in such a short period of time, because we saw what the prize was, and that wasn't about kind of local parochialism, district by district. It was actually on how can we come together and deliver something that's much better, that we all get the economic benefit of, and particularly in the current sort of economic environment, which ain't great in Merseyside as good as it is in other parts of the country. We really do need to make sure we're pulling together, because it actually makes more economic sense for us, and I think we'll continue to do that.
Peter, I think the answer to that is that because local rail services have been so badly managed in the last 20 years by Department for Transport, etc., franchises in London, that the benefits of coming together locally and managing local rail networks are so obvious and great that it's a no-brainer for most people. And clearly there are some issues in there, and I think the way Rail North governance is working out will be quite helpful. I mean, it's been quite cleverly designed so as to manage some potential conflicts. But certainly, I mean, the broader point about combined authorities, if the West Midlands can manage to get Coventry and Solihull into a combined authority, it can happen almost anywhere. But I really believe it's working when the four Bristol or Greater, or the county that used to be Avon, Cuba, authorities come together, because that's one of the most dysfunctional places that I know of in the entire country.